25th, 2023, calling this meeting to order at 6:04 p.m. Let's proceed with roll call.
Student trustee Masson,
Here.
trustee Withrow,
Here.
trustee Johannes, trustee Gonzalez Ewan,
Right here.
trustee Napoli Vallarice,
Here.
trustee Gonzalez Brito,
Here.
trustee Quinlan,
Present.
trustee Delphine Polk.
I'm here.
You have a quorum.
Okay. Thank you very much. Let's go ahead and go to the Pledge of Allegiance. Trustee Gonzalez Yuan, would you care to help us out? Sure.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Then I changed the batteries on my head and still didn't work.
Oh, no. Thank you, Trustee Gonzalez Yuan. Let's go ahead and move to 1.4, affirmation of the statement of cooperation. The Peralta Board has adopted a statement of cooperation that codifies our commitment to set the bar for excellence in governance and community college leadership and to lead by example for our Peralta colleges. The full statement of cooperation is attached to this agenda, but in summary, we have committed to build trust and seek to understand each other, to be prepared and follow good governance and ethical protocols, and model the behavior we want others to exhibit. We therefore commit to honoring and upholding these commitments in words and in action. Okay, we will move to 1.5, approval of the agenda. Motion, please.
So moved.
Thank you. Second.
Second.
Thank you. Trustee Gonzalez Yuan as a second. VP Quinlan.
1 and 9.2 off the consent calendar.
Nine 9.2.
Madam
Acceptable?
President, that's acceptable to the maker and seconder.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, let's go ahead and move to a roll call.
Quick question, Madam President, are we pulling
Yes.
9.1 and 9.2 for discussion?
VP Quinlan.
For a vote.
Yes, for action
for
rather
action.
than consent.
Thank
So
you.
that will be on the action items.
Student trustee Masson,
Yes.
trustee Withrow,
Aye.
trustee Johannes,
Yes.
trustee Gonzalez Ewan,
Yes.
trustee Napoli Vallarice,
Yes.
trustee Gonzalez Brito,
Yes.
trustee Quinlan,
Yes.
trustee Delphine Polk.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's go to report of action taken in closed session.
There were no items in closed session for reporting.
Thank you. Approval of the minutes, 3.7, motion, please. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes for our last meeting, colleagues?
So moved.
Thank you. Second,
Second.
thank you. Trustee Johannes. Roll call.
Student trustee Masson,
Yes.
trustee Withrow,
Aye.
trustee Johannes,
Yes.
trustee Gonzalez Ewan,
Abstain.
trustee Napoli Vallarice,
Yes.
trustee Gonzalez Brito,
Yes.
trustee Quinlan,
Yes.
trustee Delphine Polk.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Okay, let's move to Associated Student Government Reports. If we have anybody who wishes to speak, then now would be the time.
There is nobody on Zoom.
Okay. And it doesn't look like there's anyone in the boardroom either. Okay, let's go ahead and move to 3.9, Peralta Classified Senate Report.
There is nobody on Zoom for report.
Okay. We will move then to 3.10, District Academic Senate Report, and we have President Goldstein here.
Thanks very much. Thanks, folks. Matthew Goldstein, President of the District Academic Senate. Nice to see you. I have a few quick updates from the Curriculum Institute that I promised I would update you on when I came back this week. So that's most of today's report. First, I wanted to describe a session I went to on the Brown Act. This is an issue that's quite live here in the district, as folks can imagine, particularly as regards remote participation. And the Curriculum Institute, which is sponsored by the Academic Senate for California Community Colleges, brings together administrators, faculty, and staff to talk about curriculum. And of course, curriculum committees as formal subcommittees of the Academic Senate are subject to the Brown Act as legislative bodies, which of course the Board of Trustees is a version of as well. So the discussion around the Board Act centered on recent changes due to the pandemic and then adjustments made to the Brown Act more recently. And the bottom line is that there's no clear guidance on how to approach the Brown Act, particularly with regard again to remote participation from the state, apart from the legislation itself. And the advice that was pretty clearly articulated at the Institute was that local institutions such as ours should publish formal guidance on the issue. So I'm here to urge, if we haven't done so already, I'm simply unaware of it, formal guidance from district council on how the legislative bodies, as they're constituted here at the district, are to go ahead as we enter this new era where we try to negotiate the use of remote participation. I guess I should say that my presence here tonight suggests my own view of to what extent folks should be able to participate remotely, but I know that many of my constituents in the Academic Senate are very dedicated to continuing to allow maximal remote participation. We do have AB 2449, which permits sort of an adjusted version of some remote participation, but the key takeaway on AB 2449 is really twofold. One, it does not permit complete remote participation in legislative bodies, and it's going to dry up in a couple of years. So in the interest of consistency and perhaps creating less confusion going forward, we might consider reverting to the old-fashioned Brown Act, which, as I understand it, is perfectly acceptable under the law. So I have a 31-slide PowerPoint presentation from the ASCCC that I'd be happy to share with folks. There are key 3 or 4 slides that I think could be helpful to us if we decide, as I really feel we should, to take some kind of formal action so all of our legislative bodies operate with the same principles and requirements. I also wanted to discuss a session on AB 1111, which is the Common Course Numbering Initiative. So folks may know that the state legislature has mandated a consistent and common course numbering system at California's community colleges. As you might imagine, this is an enormous undertaking. And as you might not know, we are obligated to have it fully implemented by a year from this very moment. So that's an incredibly ambitious timeframe, as you can imagine. And so far, the $105 million that have been allotted by Sacramento for that purpose have not made their way to campuses and districts. So I've spoken with Dr. Droker about this a number of times. I would urge the board and management generally to follow faculty's lead and really bird dog this money and try to get it to come to the colleges and districts, because as you can imagine, the resources required to do a wholesale revision of our course numbering system will be considerable. So again, there's $105 million sitting out there that has not gone to the colleges and districts yet. And we're going to have to pay faculty and staff and administrators to do that work. And it's going to be work. Peralta's in pretty good shape in certain ways relative to other districts, but it's going to be an extremely heavy lift. So please be aware of that. Finally, I wanted to reiterate what's become kind of a mantra for me up here, that modality is part of curriculum. And I promised you that I try to get an answer on how to reconcile the problem of faculty's authority over curriculum and modality with the issue of management right of assignment. You'll probably be unsurprised to hear that no one has figured out how to square that circle yet. The discussion is very much alive and controversial at the state level. The consensus view that I gleaned from talking to administrators and staff and faculty from around California was that it's really to be determined locally, and that we ought to have good faith negotiations to figure out how to approach that really thorny problem. So my advice, for what it's worth, is that administration continue to listen earnestly to the recommendations of faculty and to abide by faculty expertise as they make their class and scheduling assignments, and that we figure out a way to formally address this issue. As I say, it's not something that's been elegantly settled elsewhere, but maybe we can be leaders on that front. So thanks very much. I'll see you tomorrow for the retreat. I've set up a cot in the back of the hall. So I'll see you at noon tomorrow. Again, thanks.
Thank you, President Goldstein. Let's go ahead and move to 3.11, public communication on matters that are not on the agenda. So if it's on the agenda, you can speak at that time, but if you have something now,
I have one public comment.
okay,
It's Jeff Sinceri, and Matthew Goldstein has ceded his time to Jeff.
thank you.
For all its handiness, I'm still kind of like foreign to the iPad. It switches. Anyways. Hello again. Hello, everybody. Just, it's me, Jeff, here with PFT president. Hello. I wanted to share some concerns. I think you guys remember probably last week, one of the things I talked about was that there's like two sides to like narratives, and actually ignoring one of those sides is kind of dangerous sometimes and maybe problematic. And I have some more examples that like this that I want to share. So I think one of the first things is that like I read the financial presentation and I thought it was manipulative. I hope that you saw what I saw, or at least I hope you guys are asking questions of it. If you have any questions about it for me, let me know. I don't think it's useful to get into a back and forth around this right here. I'd also add that like in this PowerPoint that's presented, that it was talk about efficiency and and cuts and fiscal responsibility. And my issue was that it was actually only talked about in the context of faculty and staff, and it wasn't necessarily talked about in the context of administration. That kind of omission is interesting to me and telling, because we actually have recently gotten information from the district that shows that over the last 6 months, administrative salaries have actually gone up 10% over the last 6 months. And that's not our analysis. That's actually numbers that the district gave us. Those are my two main comments. I'll say two quick things since I have time. One of them is I'm getting emails from faculty that are scared about facilities, especially elevators at a couple of the campuses. And I'm hearing some really scary stories. And I hope that these things get fixed before something serious happens or worse. I'll be honest with you, I'm not trying to be sensationalistic here. I'm not trying to call anybody out or do any gotcha. Basically, I get 3 minutes with you guys, and everybody else gets a lot more time. So I'm trying to just put it out there because it's a genuine concern. And I don't like 2 weeks into this, one of my members getting hurt. They'll point fingers at me too. Let's see. And the last one is actually going through a lot of the materials that I see just on the agenda, all together, taken together, is that the portrayal that is given to you guys as far as shared governance and what it is a little bit, I think I use the word whack, but I think that's just an 80s term. So I'm going to skip that and say that maybe it's just not necessarily an accurate portrayal of what actually happens at these meetings. I think instead of giving you proof or anything like that, I think what I want to do is just invite you to come to these meetings. I know where they are. I'm invited to all of them. I'm a part of all of them, all the district, committee meetings. And I just want you to come and observe and see. The only thing I would say is that before you do, maybe you don't necessarily notify the administration. And the only reason I say that is because I'd rather not have it turn into something performative. I'd rather you actually see what happens. And if there's ways that I need to change my behavior, or faculty need to change their behavior, that's fine. If it goes the other way, then that's fine too. But I certainly want you guys to experience firsthand a lot of the things that we've been writing resolutions about to you guys when it comes to AB 1725 and faculty involvement and decisions that are made here. Otherwise, I'm still, Jeff, you can still come and talk to me. You can give me if you have any questions, please, give me a call. Thank you much.
Sasha, do we have anybody who wants to participate in public comment at this time?
No, ma'am.
Thank you very much. Let's go ahead and move to 3.12, Chancellor's reports. I will hand it to you, Chancellor Jackson.
Good afternoon, Board President, board officers, colleagues, and staff. Tonight, I'd like to do something just a little bit different. We have one of our presidents who is on vacation, Dr. Barami, and we have Dr. Mildred Lewis, who is here in her place. So Mildred, you get the benefit of listening to all the other reports first. So we're going to start with Dr. Johnson at Merritt College. No, I'm not going to flip it around. And then we'll go to Laney College. And then the BCC, our interim president, Denise Richardson, Dr. Denise Richardson, and then Dr. Mildred Lewis will be last at College of Alameda. So Dr. Johnson, you first.
Okay, all this pressure. Good evening, Chancellor Jackson, President Delphine Polk, trustees, colleagues, and community. Tonight, I'm gonna keep it to a brief update and a word of congratulations. The update is, as we come to the end of the summer session, just looking at our enrollment, and please report that a 10.5% increase over the enrollment for last summer. So that's an encouraging sign, as well as the fact that we actually exceeded our FTS target, which was set at 358.4. And we actually reached 102% of our enrollment target. So that's very encouraging as well. Hoping to build upon the momentum that we've had the last couple of falls. In fall 2021, we were 81.8% of the enrollment target. Last fall, we were 84.1. So it's moving in the right direction. And we expect to do even better for fall 2023. But the word of congratulations, special to me because I've known this guy since we were in high school, a son of Oakland. So I want to close with a note of congratulations to Mr. Damon Covington, who works as a faculty member in our fire sciences department. And I'm proud to share that he was just last month appointed the interim fire chief of Oakland, California. So that's it's very big. He joined the fire department back in 2001, and he served as the president of the Oakland Black Firefighters Association from 16 to 22. And you may recall, this is like the second big appointment from Merritt. Miss Felicia Wanzo Bryant, who was another faculty member in our fire science department, just last summer was sworn in as the first woman to serve as a fire marshal for the city of Oakland. So big things at Merritt, and I'll close there.
Good evening, Chancellor Jackson, President Delphine Polk, members of the governing board, colleagues in education, and of course, our valued students and community members. Saturdays always seem to be bringing big events to Laney, and as we gear up to welcome the community to our one-stop Saturday enrollment events that are soon approaching on August 12th and 19th from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m., I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the many colleagues at Laney College who have been working through the summer intensively to really make sure that our preparations are solid and that the event comes off as the great success that it usually does, and certainly excited about that. Also, on the theme of Saturdays, this past Saturday, I was pleased to provide welcome remarks for one of our summer bridge programs, the API's Mobilized Leadership Cohort that was held over the past 5 Saturdays in our very own Laney College Bistro. It was great to congratulate these future college students and community leaders of tomorrow. And I certainly want to appreciate the many Laney College APAS and other areas of college staff members who contributed to the event, and then also the many Laney colleagues who took their Saturday to come and attend the closing ceremony that took place this past Saturday. I also want to appreciate Dr. Annie Lamb, the coordinator of the program, as well as OUSD school board member Amy Eng. And just that was kind of the tip of the iceberg, as each week just featured an exhaustive list of speakers that spoke to leadership and excellence and really prepared those who were in attendance with this cohort. And also really want to appreciate our custodial team, as well as those in food services, who really brought an extra touch of welcome to the event. And in addition to appreciating Dr. David Lee, I also want to especially highlight Dr. Becky Upsada, who our Vice President of Instruction, who along with me took time to attend on Saturday, and it was something that was great. As we've gone through this past year and looked at our increase in our enrollment numbers, one question that also comes up is the success of our students and questions around retention, persistence, and success. And one of the things that I'm very pleased to announce is that just working with our leadership, our Laney College Fall Flex Day is going to focus on those very things. We're going to highlight our tutoring services. We're going to highlight our counseling resources. And with the steps we've taken to really bring guided pathways from an initiative to a real part of our college, to talk about our newly formed student success teams for our students and a number of those things, because we really want to see our students through to completion of their programs. And that's really going to be a priority for this year as we move forward. And with that, I'll conclude my report this evening.
Good evening, Chancellor Jackson, Board President Diana Delphine Polk, trustees, colleagues, students, and members of the community. This evening, it is my pleasure to share a bit about what's happening at Berkeley City College. Last Tuesday, we had the pleasure of Councilman Rigel Robinson of Berkeley's 7th District visiting our campus. Councilman Robinson shares BCC's mission to address pressing social and environmental issues within the Berkeley community. So we discussed possible partnership opportunities and look forward to continuing the conversation in the upcoming school year. This past Thursday through Sunday, I attended the Community College League of California CEO Leadership Academy. Some of the most inspiring leaders in community college education were featured, and Dr. Helen Benjamin and Dr. Frank Chong did a brilliant job co-facilitating a session just for new CEOs. So as you can imagine, I really enjoyed that. We also got the opportunity to meet and hear from Dr. Sonia Christian, our new Chancellor of California Community Colleges, and we got to learn about Vision 2030, which builds upon the Vision for Success. One of the best parts of the conference was bonding with colleagues from across the state, sharing ideas for navigating this very pivotal period in education, and collaborating on strategies for moving this work forward. The League's president and CEO, Dr. Gary Galizio, and his team did an amazing job bringing together some of the most insightful thought leaders in education. Our July enrollment workshops led by Gail Pendleton and Angelica Pena have been a huge success, so much so that we're extending them an additional 2 weeks during the month of August just to meet student demand. They were also featured earlier today during an interview with Chris Shimura, a reporter from NBC's KNTV. He came to BCC to get details about our Fall is Free program and was able to observe firsthand what we are doing to make the enrollment process seamless for our students. Lastly, I'd like to highlight one of my favorite events at BCC so far. As noted in the board report, on July 13th, our NOVA and RISE team hosted almost 40 rising ninth graders from the Berkeley Unified School District. NOVA is one of our dual enrollment pathways that is co-taught by Skylar Barton and Dre Regalado. Each student shared posters that highlighted their past, present, and future goals. And it was really a treat to talk to them about their stories. I was particularly struck by how clear they were about the academic and career direction they intend to take. And many of them mentioned Berkeley City College as a planned part of their educational journey. So the program was clearly a success. Thank you. This concludes my report for Berkeley City College.
Good evening, Chancellor Jackson, Board President Delphine Polk, trustees, and community members. I'm happy to present on behalf of Dr. Bajrami. I will highlight campus events and items not covered in the board report you received. College of Alameda will host a free enrollment festival tomorrow from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. on campus with an eye on increasing enrollment for fall 2023. We will provide class enrollment and student IDs, counseling with student education plans, financial aid support, guided pathways to distinguished programs, and food trucks and a DJ. We are also conducting a call campaign to increase enrollment by connecting students to our free enrollment festival and financial aid. This upcoming weekend, the city of Alameda is having a local fair. College of Alameda will have an outreach booth to promote the college and our programs. And finally, College of Alameda would like to thank DGS for the 90-day cleaning project to prepare the campus for fall 2023. Thank you. This concludes College of Alameda's report.
Thank you, presidents. You're doing a great job, and future presidents too. I do want to address the Brown Act that was brought up during public comment, not to comment on it, but to say that a presentation was provided by the PGC on that, and that we sought the advice of Natasha Sahi, who prepared a very detailed memorandum, and I will be sending that out to the board as a reminder, as well as to our constituency groups. That concludes our chancellor's report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chancellor Jackson. Let's go ahead and move to our first presentation, 4.1, the marketing plan. Mark, if you're ready, let's go.
Thank you.
You can go ahead and introduce yourself if you'd like.
Thank you very much, President Delphine Polk. My name is Mark Johnson. I'm the Executive Director of Marketing, Communication, and Public Relations at the Peralta Community College District. And it's my pleasure to present to you the 23-24 marketing plan for the district. And I need to change our view. And now we're ready to rock and roll. Okay. I want to, first of all, thank Marcus Creel from the marketing team for his help in putting together the slides for me. Moving on to the updates for the marketing plan for this year. We looked at the plan from last year and felt that strategically it was still the right plan. So what we really tried to do with the plan this year was update it to match the strategic district plan. You all had the first reading of the district's strategic plan in May as part of the same agenda item where you approved the 4 college educational master plans. If that plan should change before you have your second read in September and we need to adjust it, we're flexible and can adjust it accordingly. But we did incorporate that draft strategic plan as part of our plan. Last year we had 7 areas of focus. We've reduced that to 6 this year. We updated our tactics and we still refer to the board goals. You'll be meeting tomorrow to discuss these goals. If they should change, then we're ready to adapt our marketing plan as appropriate. But we hope that you adopt sort of a similar approach and keep these high-level strategic goals in place and talk about tactics. As far as the marketing plan you have, it has 6 main points. One, enrollment, technology, branding, social media, TV and radio programming, and data reporting. Last year we had 7 that included staffing. I'm really pleased to say that since July of 2022, we've hired 2 people. One was a replacement for a gentleman that retired. And one was a position that has been on the books for years, but was unfunded. And we came across some additional categorical funds and were able to hire that position. So now marketing is fully staffed, which I'm really excited about. So drilling down into the marketing plan in terms of enrollment. I had a mentor at Stanford who once said, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to do it. Then I'm going to tell you I did it. So if you bear with me, part of the presentation for the future is looking back at what we did this past year. And for 22-23, we started with the idea of doing Back to Your Future as a fall campaign, but we were able to roll out Fall is Free at Laney and at Merritt, 500 on Us at College of Alameda, and Free for Fall at Merritt College, which all were very successful campaigns. We were able to unify across the 4 colleges for Spring is Free in 2023. These campaigns were very successful. They resulted in 11 to 12% student body increase, enrollment increase across all 4 of the colleges. That included the paid advertising we did, but we also were very successful in getting our press releases picked up by local media. Free College is a big story, and we got coverage by the San Francisco Chronicle, the East Bay Times, local TV stations, KQED, and in fact, that our press release on Spring is Free helped win first place for Peralta in the media success category at the Community College Public Relations Organization, which is the trade organization for the 116 California PIOs and marketing types. When I spoke last year, you asked me to dig down into the data to help understand better how our ads, the efficacy of our ads. And I want to thank Aaron Harbour, who is a web content developer on the team. He really did a lot of digging in our data to help inform this information. So we found that there were over 3,200 new students in the spring of 23. And yet when you looked at the enrollment from fall of 22 to spring of 23, it looked like enrollment was essentially flat. Well, we suddenly, after being excited about generating 3,000 new students, we realized we had lost 3,000 students. So the ability to kind of retain our students from semester to semester really rose to be a priority for us. We looked at the applied but not enrolled data that we get from CCC Apply, and we set up some automation to send HubSpot generated emails to those college branded messages so that the students can continue the process to enroll at colleges. And I'm pleased to report that over 1,000 students who received those emails from our system enrolled. We noticed that 998 people at least visited the Peralta landing page at peralta.edu/enroll and then enrolled. So if you look at the funnel on the right, our ad campaign for spring resulted in 1.5 million ad impressions. Those 1.5 million impressions drove 20,000 visits to our landing page. Of the 20,000 visits to our landing page, essentially 1,000 students enrolled. So we're getting a better understanding of what we would need to spend if we wanted to hit X target in terms of enrollment. Speaking of enrollment, let's talk about 23-24 now. I'm super thrilled. We are all aligned once again for Fall is Free in 23. We will be advertising in both English and Spanish. I'm absolutely thrilled in the collaboration across the district. The 4 colleges and myself have all committed to put in $100,000 from each of our budgets so that we have $500,000 for advertising spend for our fiscal year. We're going to divide that up with 40% of the spend for fall, 40% for spring, and then 20% for summer and first communications about fall 24. For the fall campaign, we have videos and banners. We have YouTube videos, videos for broadcast. OTT is over the top. I've heard feedback already that people have seen our ads on Cron 4 Evening News, which is really exciting. We have audio ads that are running on Spotify. We have house ads that are running through Google Search and Google Maps. We have a postcard that's coming to 288,000 households in our 6-city service area. We continue to email students who have gone to CCC Apply but not yet enrolled. We'll be testing a new vendor called Modomatic, which is headquartered here in Oakland. They specialize in bringing back stopouts. So we're really looking forward to working with them and seeing what we can do to help retain students more effectively. And then we have banners with Laney that my team helped put up. We also have banners from Berkeley City College and other banners that are out there. In the interest of time, I won't play the TV ads, but I want to give a shout out to Angel Hunter. She did a fantastic job of producing these videos. We have 15-second versions, 30-second versions. We have time-sensitive versions that will play through August 21st. We have evergreen versions that we can show for late start classes. And we're working on creating Spanish language versions of the ads as well. As you can see from these screenshots, we've got a common theme, a very family resemblance for the 4 Peralta colleges, or for at least the 3 Peralta colleges, Merritt, College of Alameda, and Laney. Berkeley City College had engaged an agency. And so while they're still promoting Fall is Free, they have a slightly different visual bent. Here are the Laney billboards. Here's the postcard that's going out. And I just heard from Folger Graphics today They are done printing, and the first delivery was done to the USPS today. So they should arrive in households' mailboxes next week, if not sooner. We updated our landing page to emphasize that students need to complete the FAFSA or the California Dream App application in order to qualify for the free fall. And we also updated our landing page for a Spanish language version. So since we have Spanish language ads, we want to point them to the Spanish language landing page. So that's it for enrollment. Going into technology, as you know, we launched our new website in February of 2022. In August, we added website translations. In October, we signed an important agreement with Ocelot, which allowed us to begin using their service for texting our current students. We added chatbot on the district site in February. I participated in enrollment assessment regarding PeopleSoft Phase 3 with High Point, looking forward to following up their recommendations in the next year. And finally, just want to note that our website redesign also won an award from CC Pro. As far as 23-24 tactics, we're going to focus on HubSpot CRM enhancement. We brought on HubSpot in March of 2020. You might remember there was something else going on in March of 2020. We had to pivot very quickly to launch Safe Peralta and keep our community well informed about the pandemic. So we didn't get a chance to really build out the customer relationship management back end of our CRM system. And so thanks to you all for approving our HubSpot contract that included some professional services work. We're going to be building that out. What does that mean? We're looking at adding what HubSpot calls deals. So right now, identifying a student is basically a yes or no question. Are they a student or not? With this added work that we're doing in HubSpot, we'll be able to say, were they a student in spring of 23? Were they a student in fall of 23? And we can set up some automations in how we communicate with students based on that different history of enrollment. So very excited about that. My team will also be helping with website upgrades. Berkeley City College is in the process of working on lining up a vendor for their website migration to HubSpot. Merritt College is very interested in piggybacking on that work. Laney has expressed interest as well. My team is there to support those colleges. We'll be decommissioning the old website and moving Safe Peralta to HubSpot. In terms of branding, we had a really productive year in terms of telling our story and updating our visual aesthetic. That included the Chancellor's Search brochure, the annual report, the first annual report we've done, at least in recent memory, helping with college catalogs, the adopted budget. Marcus Creel, our graphic designer, did some cartography work, updating the campus map at Laney. He also did some work with the other campuses in collaboration with DGS. We had, again, a family resemblance of the 4 colleges for our semester schedules, and those covers won another award from CC Pro. But we didn't stop there. We also helped the colleges with other branding projects, including the Merritt College mascot update, Go Panthers. We helped Merritt and Laney do some very modest logo updates from a graphic perspective. And we've worked with the other colleges as well in terms of departmental level logos. Again, trying to emphasize a family resemblance across our visual properties. We intend to continue to do the same. On this, I want to call out number 3, which is a focus on district participatory governance committees. I agree. We do a lot of really great work in collaboration in those district committees, and that collaborative work needs a lot more visibility. And so my team wants to help facilitate the communication around those meetings. In terms of social media, we had a really good year. Despite being shorthanded for a spell, one of our employees was on a medical leave, and a faculty member, an adjunct faculty member from Berkeley City College, stepped in and helped us out and did amazing work. We didn't miss a beat. In fact, you can see our audience grew by 10%. We're now over 16,500 followers on all of our different platforms. We published our first paid ad on TikTok. and our engagement was up. I know it's difficult to read in this slide. Hopefully you can see it a little bit better in the PDF, but this is a comparison of fiscal year 21-22 social media with fiscal year 22-23. And as you can see, our audience grows, our posts grew, our interactions grew. The only thing we need to work on is clicks. And we're working on that. And so that's part of what our plan is for 2023-24 is to continue doing what we've been doing very successfully, but focus on generating more clicks. In terms of TV and radio programming, we are so proud of the collaboration with Laney College and Dr. Rudy Besikoff for the President's Desk and Dr. David Johnson and the Merritt Hour. And we hope that BCC and College of Alameda follow suit with programming in the near future. We covered some sporting events. We covered P-SPAN. We cover Board of Trustees meetings, which appear on Peralta's cable TV station, as well as live broadcast on KGPC radio. We're excited about continuing that progress now that we are fully staffed. Last thing I'll end on is data reporting. So in 22-23, we did a survey with students in the fall. We learned that YouTube was by far their most popular social media platform. That the data that we got from that survey helped inform our buying for our Fall is Free campaign. We upgraded to Google Analytics. We used Google Analytics and demographic data from our institutional research colleagues to identify the languages for our translated content on the website. And also to make buys. And hopefully, well, I've been sharing with the presidents and with the chancellor the great coverage that's coming out of the district with some of our media stories. Our tactics are going to be continue to do what we've been doing, but particularly with the focus on the integration between HubSpot and PeopleSoft. I'm very excited about PeopleSoft Phase 3 and incorporating the changes that were recommended by our consultant to improve the student experience. And part of that will come from more integration between our CRM and our educational system. And with that, I'll open it up to questions.
So I'll kick it off. I'm really, as you know, Mark, I've talked a lot about this, is advertising in languages other than English. I'm really excited to see that we are going to be continuing to advertise for Fall is Free and in Spanish in particular. So my question is, do we have any plans of having our ads in ethnic media?
That's a really good question. I haven't explored that, but I think that makes a lot of sense. You know, I had a conversation with the PIO types, web content developers, deans of enrollment, and the directors of student life and campus activities earlier today. And we're already thinking about what are we going to do for spring of 2024. And one of the concepts came up with, if we're not able to do Spring is Free, then we need other value propositions. And I think the way that we get a lot of other value propositions is at a very granular level, not even at the high level college, but and not necessarily at the department level, but even going into specific programs. And I think that advertising in ethnic media is a really good choice when you're starting to be that focused.
Yeah, no, I'm really encouraged that we're doing this thing. Thank you.
Sure.
VP Quinlan?
Yes, thank you for your report, Mark. So the question I have, and we've had this discussion a number of times around the marketing of our programs, especially some of the new apprenticeship initiatives like the cybersecurity apprenticeship, the teacher's apprenticeship, because those are pathways. And as we read more and more of the data about people kind of turning away from college as the importance of it is lessened in the public eye. And very few people realize the job training, career training opportunities in our programs. I'm just wondering how we're addressing those, the issue of bringing those programs forward. Especially to me, there is no better way to get paid to learn in an apprenticeship is like the absolute best.
Yeah, that's a great question. the candid answer is right here, right now, we're really focused at college brand awareness and making sure that people know that fall is free, just big picture. There's opportunity to get granular, not just with languages and ethnicities, but also specific programs. And I think what you're talking about makes a lot of sense. I went to a presentation at the CC Pro conference in Los Angeles in April, and saw an amazing presentation about an internship program that was promoted, and they used the app. It's the same app that College of Alameda uses. Our other 3 colleges don't have that app. It seemed like there was an opportunity for us to kind of expand our footprint with that service, because the data that they were sharing looked really amazing as far as how they understood their student audience and were able to bring students into the program.
Is there a way to tie our colleges programs into our advertising so that they're aligned, and so the colleges can talk about the things they're doing program-wise and opportunity-wise for our students?
Yeah, that's sort of the point of what we're doing with Fall is Free, giving some top-level brand awareness and making sure that people understand that tuition can be waived if you're a California resident and you apply for federal financial aid or do the DREAM Act application. When you start getting into more specific programs, right now, the division of labor is that's at the colleges. The strategic plan that you had the first reading of recommended a greater leadership role by the district marketing team. We haven't adopted that plan yet. We haven't incorporated that strategy into our budgets yet. So I'm hoping that someday we are at that place, but we're not there yet.
Thank you.
Trustee Gonzalez-Yuan.
Thank you. I really appreciated the detail on the sort of the metrics on the digital outreach and the social media outreach. That was great.
Thank you.
I'd love to even understand more, like how you're making this connection to this outcome, but you didn't have time tonight, so
Right.
some other time. I've got 2 main kind of areas that I'm interested in, and one is to what extent we're leveraging the people-to-people relationships. Now, I'm not a marketing person, so I don't know. I'm now asking, but I am a political organizer. I'm an elected official. I'm an instructor, and I understand a thing about the power of peer-to-peer relational organizing. And so if you go to like current organizing conferences, what people are talking about is everybody has a network. The most credible voice isn't Twitter, it's your best friend, it's your sister, and so forth. And so there was one outfit that I just came back from Netroots Nation conference, and there was this one outfit that was looking at tapping into people's personal databases and then figuring out who's in the demographic area, cross-referencing with voter files, et cetera, to reach people. It seems to me that all of our students have networks and all of our faculty and staff have networks, and that's a critical area that we should be leveraging. But this is your area, not mine. So I'm just thinking as a political scientist and as a political figure, how do you translate that? And maybe there's a correlation that's useful. I don't need a response on it right now. The second thing that I'm wondering now is, as I looked at the report, I was wondering about who's our target audience. So social media, certain kinds of social media will reach certain networks, but we've got like how many million people in the demographic, and we look and go, well, why aren't they here? We've got cool stuff. What are we doing to reach particular target audiences? And I'm wondering, as you and your staff look, you've got to be figuring, well, we're going to reach that network, and here's our theory of how we're going to reach that network. Can you talk a little bit about what demographic group you're trying to go after, and what's your theory of going after that group?
Yeah, absolutely. You raise an amazing point, which is Who is a candidate for community college? Everyone. I mean, we have programs for everyone, from dual enrollment programs, traditional college student age, lifelong learners. We have programs, I mean, for everybody. You all know that. The way I view it is we need to be fundamentally sound before we start getting into really complex micro-targeting of things. And we haven't been fundamentally sound in recent years. It's only within the last, 2 years, juggling the pandemic while still, focusing on district-wide advertising, that we've really made progress. So I think that tapping into local networks is really important. We're not doing that yet. I should say we're not doing that fully and focused as we could be. I'll give you an example. We did some interviews with graduating students. Those were the most popular posts on our Instagram account. People really responded to students talking about their positive experiences that they had at our colleges. They are our best spokespeople. So leveraging them in the future is something that we really, really want to do.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, for example, a target demographic must be high school students.
Yeah.
And we've got dual enrollment programs, and tapping into that social network would be powerful if we could figure out how to leverage those kinds. And if we were just, it's like, this is just me, again, I'm not an expert, but I don't think of that as micro targeting. I think of that as the basics.
Yeah, we do reach
Yeah.
out to OU, Oakland Unified School District students, Alameda Unified School District students. Yeah.
Thank you again so much for the detail on the digital outreach and that impact. I look forward to more.
Great.
Thank you, Mark. And I won't take offense that you use the word tactics over and over again in your report. Maybe that was a difference to my military background, but thank you. And please note the matrices. Some of the things that we included in our plan were really based upon feedback that we got from the board in the past, because that was a question. How do we know how effective we're being? So we've been trying to adjust that in the last couple of reports. So thank you, Mark.
Trustee Reese, did you have your hand up?
Thank you, Mark, for that report. I think one of the things that I've noticed from our prior conversations at the board is that the colleges weren't necessarily seen as necessarily part of the district, right? They were so separate. So what I'm seeing from this presentation is that there is this movement towards making them really part of the family, that they are distinctly and visually, and when BCC comes aboard, it's going to look like they are all part of Peralta. And so that's really important. And what I think I'm hearing, and I don't know if I'm correct, but what I think I'm hearing, and also talking about the strategic plan and the new position that the district media department is going to be taking in relationship to the other colleges, is I feel like we're moving towards a kind of centralization, hopefully, or at least a support mechanism between your department and really responding, anchoring, supporting the college branding, website, PIO, you know what I mean. And I love that. I think that that's great, because I think that we're leveraging that. My question is, you said earlier that you're starting to get a sense of what the budget's going to look like as you're looking at the impressions, the clicks, and the conversions. Do you have an idea of what that budget is starting to look like? I know that from the colleges, you've gotten 100,000 each and you're at $500,000, but as you look at, as you study the analytics, and the other question there too is, are we doing the analytics between the impressions, the clicks, and the conversions, or are we having somebody really take that valuable information so we can do something with it? So those two questions, one, how much, two, who's doing who's archiving and kind of getting that information between those, the trifecta.
Yeah, great comments and questions. I really view the college presidents as my clients. what I'm trying to do is create a district service organization that serves the colleges in their effort to bring in students to the colleges. So I'm glad that came through, because that's exactly the philosophy that we're trying to establish. As far as the budget goes, right now we're scrambling. I mean, my budget is small. My Fund 1 budget is $450,000, and I'm running a TV station and a radio station and spending what's left over on advertising. So I don't have a lot of money to spend on advertising, which is why I'm so thrilled that the colleges have collaborated with the district to come up with a pot of $500,000 for our base level advertising. That's not 100% of the ad spend for the colleges. The colleges are still continuing to spend on their specific programs, and a lot of our marketing or advertising money doesn't really even sit at the college level. It sits at the departmental level through strong workforce grants, things like that. So this year, my team worked with Merritt College to help them spend some of their strong workforce money. It was a very successful campaign. And I'm hoping that all of the other colleges will help take us up on our ability to kind of steer them. Like I said, that's part of the strategic plan that you all saw in the May first read of our district strategic plan. To your second question, Trustee Reese, it's mostly myself and Aaron Harbor in my department that's kind of drilling into the data to figure out what the efficacy is of our ads. I rely on the vendors that we use to give us some of the fundamental information like clicks. We're validating the information that we get from the advertisers with the data that we're seeing on our website, which is why Aaron, as web content developer, is so important. Yeah. If it sounds like I'm dancing around the question of how much, it's like, we don't really have a sense yet.
Yeah, and I'm wondering, Chancellor, at some point, because we've talked about marketing a lot, right? And it's hard to kind of figure out what the secret is to declining enrollment and figuring that out. But I'm wondering if at the board level, that's something that we talk about in terms of what are we willing as a board to allocate to marketing so that we could have substantial increases in that direction. Because I think a party of two being able to do those analytics is probably going to be insufficient to get the information that we need. And I know nothing about that, but I would imagine that you really need to do a deep dive if you're going to try to get that information and do something with it. So it's going to be, and that might be a conversation that this board has to have in terms of, what is our priority?
Yeah. One of the things, and I just mentioned it briefly to the board, is that the plan is we've done some brainstorming, which we're going to share with you tomorrow during the retreat, during our facilitated discussions. But we've already put on the books a follow-up retreat for the deans and the vice presidents, which we held last year for the first time, and we're going to go back and revisit that. One of the other things that came out of that discussion was how do we leverage our categoricals and our grants so that we aren't doing things in silos, but we're doing them collectively to get a better bang for the buck. And then one of the other things that we discussed during our brainstorming was we have researchers. At one time, some of you that have been here as long as I have in the district, we eliminated researchers during the downturn in 2008, and we just had researchers at the district office. We've started to move back the other way again, but also looking collectively at how can our researchers help us in that effort. We now hired Dr. Francisco Herrera, first time we've had a district researcher in a number of years. And so that's all going to be on that table for further discussion. So we're going to give you some teasers. These are things that we're looking at. And then we're going to ask you some hard questions tomorrow about, do we need to expend resources in this effort, and just get some guidance from you on that tomorrow during our retreat. And if we do not get through all of it, because there's a lot of things on the agenda, remember, we don't work to time. We work to quality and having a product at the end. So we can always reschedule, but we do want to take a view at some of those things that we can start on now and others that may be more strategic that we can have another follow-up meeting on.
Trustee Gonzalez Run.
Thank you. God, I'm really appreciating just the kind of the brainstorming here. And one of the things I'm thinking about is how we leverage the power of the rest of the institution. And I'm thinking of the work that we do down at Foothill De Anza with student internships. So look, we have a digital arts program at Berkeley City College. We have powerful instruction going on where we could integrate a lot of that kind of work into this work. So at Foothill De Anza, we have over 40 paid internships down there. And I could just imagine if we thought creatively about that network here, it would be a win-win-win. Really, it would be a very student-centered approach to the kind of training. And I know that we've got that in some places here already. If we could begin to think about that more systematically as how we think about how we integrate it, our decisions will be better and they'll be more closer to the students in any case. We'll get a much better sense of the heartbeat of the community. So you all are creative. I'm sure you're going to figure this out. Go at it, man. Keep going. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Gonzalez-Ewan.
Yeah.
Chancellor, it sounds like staffing is back on one of my strategic priorities with a definite student bent, which I think is a really fantastic thing to pursue.
And just to let the board know, we have every Monday, we meet either as an executive cabinet or as an expanded cabinet, including the vice presidents, the VPIs, the VPSSs, and the VPASs at the colleges. And we were just notified, Emily Kaplan, who we hired as the executive director of grants, presented to us a proposal for us to look at expanded pathways and internships. So I'm going to give you an update. There's a lot of things we're doing that we don't bring up at every meeting, but just so you get an idea of where we're going this next year. Thank you, Mark.
Okay, colleagues, any other questions or comments? Okay. Thank you very much, Mark. Okay, we will now move to our second presentation, 4.2 fiscal overview. Dr. Jones.
Okay, while Dr. Jones is moving to the podium and we're getting his slide presentation, let me just give you kind of a preliminary update. We've been working on this for several months, and it never seems to be enough time on the agenda because of other priorities. So Dr. Jones has been very patient. He and I worked on this. We've had several iterations, changes, reduction of slides, etc. So he is going to carry the bulk of the presentation, but I'll pop in every now and then just to provide some, what do they call it in sports? Color commentary. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Jones to give you an update. And we want to remember, I just want to remind you, we moved this, we were going to do this back in early January because we had new trustees, but we wanted to wait until we had our appointment. And then after that, a lot of other things came up. So this is really focusing on, some of you may recall, we're going to cover some things that we've done before, but it was really focusing on the new trustees so that they can understand how we budget, where we get our funding from, the process that we go through in doing that, some best practices. And with that, Dr. Jones.
Thank you very much, Chancellor. Okay. As Dr. Jackson indicated, this is sort of an overview. It's to provide some additional information for some of you, and for others, it may be new information. The way that I have tried to approach this is to provide you with information in advance and also supplemental information. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on each of the slides, but rather to provide opportunities for us to engage in dialogue through questions. So I'm just going to hit really, really high points on many of these items and then move on, okay? Allowing you to ask questions, and then I can give you more in-depth answers specifically to the things that you're most interested in. Okay, let's move to the next slide, please. All right. The State Chancellor Office has indicated that there are fundamental elements that constitute or make up good fiscal health that all districts should have. And they include governance structures, prudent fiscal practices, structures of accountability, and equitable resource allocation. I'm pleased to say while we have made progress on many of these and continue to do work, we have all of these elements in our normative business practices. Next slide. Rather than emphasizing and talking about what the Board of Governors and the State Chancellor's Office does, let's look at colleges. What are colleges and districts' responsibility? To comply with principles of sound governance, and we'll demonstrate that we in fact do that. Provide reports to the State Chancellor Office related to the fiscal health and condition of the district. To engage with an external auditor, get the external audit done, and the report submitted in a timely manner. Next slide. Obviously, with the importance of reporting and the critical decisions that are needed to be made relative to improving on a continuous basis, as well as the fiscal implications, data integrity is very, very important. And it is codified in statute, the requirements for timely, accurate, and reliable submission of this data, not just to the State Chancellor's Office, but also to our accreditors. The district, Peralta, has been taking steps to enhancing and improving the quality of our data. We've contracted with Cambridge West, and the board has received presentation on the work that we've done to improve in these areas. And there's still more work to be done, but we are making very, very sincere and concerted efforts to improve.
And I just want to point this out because there was a question from the board regarding data integrity, the data integrity project. The dates that you see on this particular slide are presentations that were made by Cambridge West. And one of the things that this project was looking at is now that we're moving forward with the SCIF implementation, and we know what those factors are, and Dr. Jones is going to talk about SCIF later on, the 70-20-10. We know that they are going to be looking at the data that we submit to then turn around and make revenue allocations. If the data that we submit is not accurate or is misrepresented or was not reported at all, we will not get those funds. So that's why this project was so important, and it is continuing on, but you'll be able to see the gap. But I just wanted to point that out because I had some board members ask me about this, and it's called the Data Integrity Project under Ed Services with Dr. Stephanie Droker and her staff, because they work directly with the colleges on this to make sure that at the lowest level, which are those people that are doing data entry and admissions and records, that go all the way up to the state, that go all the way up to the feds in our iPads reports and our 311 and our 320 reports, that's why that's important. Those are the 3 board presentations, yes.
Next slide, please, Sasha. Thank you. When it comes to adhering to principles of sound fiscal management, what I want the board to understand is these are many of the key principles. And I'm pleased to convey that you'll see that we do a lot of this already. We do all of this to varying degrees, but we do. Case in point, our presentation this evening, item number 6, governing boards kept informed on fiscal condition. We do that with regard to the tentative budget. We do it with periodic presentations. Dr. Jackson was just talking about accurate and reliable management information systems. We have our BI tool. We have an update to our PeopleSoft system. These are sources of information that are derived from our electronic systems. In a similar manner, we have process for evaluating fiscal changes in policy and then understanding what the implications of those changes are to our own district. We do that by way of 5-year report with fiscal modeling that takes place, and that information has been provided to the district in various presentations and forums. At our last board meeting, you were presented with information on the capital outlay plan in a 5-year projection. I take the time to share these things because some of you board members are new. And you've seen some of these things being brought to this body. It's intentional, and we are seeking to follow these principles in practice. Next slide, please. Yes, ma'am.
What's the difference between the yellow highlight, the green highlight, the bold, and is there a magical code?
There's no magical code. It's just different things that I wanted to think about and to highlight when I'm talking.
You're too discerning. No hidden message.
Yeah, there are no hidden messages. It's just, yeah. Me being somewhat particular and very anal. All right. Now, the other thing on this slide here, what's important here is to know that the State Chancellor's Office pays close attention to what goes on with regard to the districts. And that there are certain triggers that, in a sense, cause them to pay closer attention. And some of these items are latent missing report. We indicated that there's a lot of reports that are due to the State Chancellor's Office. Negative media attention, whistleblower complaints, adverse accreditation status, and then their own fiscal analysis. And some of these have caused Peralta to get on, garner the attention of the State Chancellor's Office. And then the other items are the list of interventions that they impose or to bring to bear to try to get the district back on a good foundation. I think the reason that I included this is to help you to understand what are the things that entities external to the district pay attention to that cause them to be concerned, so that as we operate, we are mindful of the kinds of things that we should try to make sure that we steer clear of. Next slide, please. And as we seek to enhance our budgeting process, there are standards, there are guidelines in which we can and should be aware of to help us to do it in a very, very fiscally responsible and appropriate manner. And this is one that the State Chancellor's Office, once again, has adopted. We have clear policies around budgeting, that the budget is transparent. We match one-time revenues with short-term expenditures or expenses. We match ongoing revenues with ongoing resources. That we include a 5-year projection. And I take the time to indicate something because you've seen some of these things. When we submit our tentative budget, when we submit our adopted budget, we include these elements because, as I said before, in many instances, while we always can improve, we have a very, very good, solid practice when it comes to fiscal management. We've now requested, and under your leadership, you've approved a change in our reserve policy. And now we have a reserve policy that reflects a 2-month operating expenditure. Next slide, please.
I just want to say on this particular slide, currently every year we go through an annual audit. And these are the things that they look at when they're looking at our budget. Are we using one-time money for short-term projects and not ongoing expenses? And if so, then we get audit exceptions. And I just want to point out for the record that for the last 2 years, we have had a clean audit, as they say. Recommendations of improvement, usually you always get those, but nothing of a serious nature as we have experienced in the past. And that's because of the due diligence that we provide on that. So again, continue on, Dr. Jones.
Thank you, Chancellor. Next slide, please. And so these are just some of the sources that guide the development of the structures that the State Chancellor's Office uses and that we use also to inform how we approach budgeting and fiscal management. Next slide, please. Currently, this is essentially how we are structured. We have we have the 4 colleges, we have sort of shared services and the district office. One of the things that we need to look at and to address is that there isn't as clear a delineation between the shared services and the district office. And a lot of that is conflated. And also there is sort of understatement in terms of the operating expenses of each of the colleges as a result of that, because we haven't structured our chart of accounts and our budgeting to more accurately reflect the revenues and operating expenses of each of the entities. And that's one of the things that we are going to seek to do with regard to the implementation of the new resource allocation model as we do that work over the course of this fiscal year. Next slide,
I
please.
just want to underscore this for the board. This is the work that we have been involved in for the last 5
Couple of-
years.
Yeah.
No, 5 years.
Okay.
When I came on board, we were working with Cambridge West CM. If you remember, CM has been working with us over that period of time. It's taken that amount of time for us to have a change in how we look at budgeting. And sometimes when you hear presentations and people make statements about how much the district is spending, some of those costs are costs that are incurred across the district, but because they come out of the district budget. So we pay for all of the databases that we have at the colleges, the library databases. The district does not have a library, but we pay for it out of our budget, but it's on behest of the colleges. We pay for Canvas, which is our online teaching module software. We pay for that at the district. We don't teach classes at the district. So what we're trying to get people to look at is we need to segment out our budget so that it aligns with what is coming up in the future, which is a decentralization of resources and revenue. We still have a model where everything is at the district level and we pay out of the district. So people say the district is spending so much money. Some of that money, not all of it, is really the colleges should be paying for it. We have not made that transition, and it's taken us this long to get to what you're looking here that looks like nice and easy and clean and pretty. It is messy as heck. And it's the one where we have to have those hard decisions this next year and ongoing. We decided not to do it last year because we weren't ready for it. So we came to you and asked you to look at a budget allocation model, but it really was a revenue allocation model. So if you recall this last year in the spring, CM came in and gave you a presentation. He said, it's your first reading because we have a lot of hard questions that we have to. And so the PBC, our Planning and Budget Committee, is responsible for taking on this charge. And it is our highest level participatory governance body. And they will be coming to you within this next year because we have earmarked 2024, 25, which is when we don't have hold harmless, of moving to this new SCIF model. So I just wanted to point that out. I want you to understand that because it's going to be critical to us moving forward. And all of us around this table are working on that to make sure it's the right model for our district. Thank you.
Chancellor. Yes, and so currently, one of the things that I want to emphasize here is that our budget process at the district currently largely is based on the state budget process coming from the state governors may rise and so forth, that timeline. And what our shared governance process is intended to provide a way of allowing that to satisfy the statutory requirements for producing a budget, okay? And that's really important because it does not necessarily include budgeting activities and decision-making and engagement that occurs at the college level. That's one of the things that we're going to change, and I'm going to talk about that later. But as it stands right now, the district finance prepares certain information and has all the budgets, and it comes forward. We present that to the Planning and Budget Committee, and then it's voted on and then goes to the Participatory Governance Council comes to the chancellor's cabinet as in the form of a recommendation, and then comes to the Board of Trustees in terms of the tentative and then the adopted budget. But there is this kind of participatory engagement and dissemination of information. Next slide, please.
And I just want to say, so when people say we don't have a process, or we didn't follow a process and we just brought it to the board, that is not true. This is the process. And so I want all of you to understand that. Doesn't mean that we have to do what, these are advisory committees. Just like I make recommendations to the board, you can choose to accept it or not. The same with these. It is I don't like the term shared governance because there's no shared responsibility. It is a participatory process that we go through and an engagement process. Unfortunately, with the changes in how the budget, we've got to change this process. So we have some recommendations that have come out of that discussion with these specific bodies of how we can change that in the future. So I'm sorry. I didn't think that President Delphine Polk could
Yeah.
see you, but I
Is it a
can.
Is it a clarifying question, Trustee Gonzalez Brito?
I'm not sure. Can I ask you and then you can tell me whether to wait or not?
Sure.
I've just, and actually you don't have to answer it now. I'm just interested in learning more about what each of these different buckets, so district finance, planning and budget council participate, what happens at each of those? And maybe we can sit down and you can explain to me more in terms of what they see and then what gets produced afterwards in more detail.
All right, well, that
And
actually,
it's evolving. It is
Sure.
evolving, but yes.
but you bring up a great point,
Yeah.
and thank you very much. And I know you didn't do it intentionally, but I appreciate the setup because here are some of the.
I did it intentionally.
You did, there you go. Thank you. So here are some of the documents that we use. I mean, when we are doing this, we're planning on, in terms of the revenue side, and obviously the chief component in terms of driving our revenue is FTS, and it's the central part of our mission, the instruction. And so we look at the FTS targets that we are likely to be pursuing for a given fiscal year, and the FTF that we're going to allocate. So we have those documents that we prepare and then we share with the various governing bodies. And then we look at the revenue projections. There we present to the shared governance or participatory governance body what our assumptions are on the revenue side, based on information that we have received from the governor's budget and information that we receive from the state chancellor's office and others that provide us with input on other kinds of funding, not just the apportionment funding, but we also get information on grants or increases and things like that that we include in the overall tentative budget. And so those things we typically do. We provide a presentation at our tentative budget for that. We provide, and that includes typically assumptions regarding the revenues and any other relevant information. And it also includes typically a 5-year projection. Same thing for the adopted budget. We do the same thing. The same thing, we follow the same kind of structure and process on the expense budgeting side. What are the prevailing assumptions around salary increases, benefit increases, utilities, et cetera, OPEB liability, and so forth. So we do the same sort of thing in terms of the information that we provide. And you've seen some of that for those of you who are new. For those of you who are more seasoned trustees, you know that this is true and you've seen it several times in your tenure as trustees. Next slide, please. And this is just a high level summary of the timeline. And it corresponds exactly to the more detailed budget development calendar that you guys have approved. So next slide. And this is just for your reference. Here is the specific link to the budget development calendar that was approved by the Board of Trustees. Next slide. So what we've done is sort of talked about budgeting and fiscal management from a high level general overview standpoint. Now we're going to shift gears a little bit, pivot a little bit, and talk about a little bit of the nuts and bolts, still at high level, but talking about the student-centered funding formula from an overall standpoint. Next slide, Sasha, when you get a chance, go to the first, next one after that. Yep. Okay.
So before you start on this, let me just give you a little bit of background. The student-centered funding formula, we started discussions on this around the state back in 2015. At that time, we looked at what I tell people, and they seem to understand. It's a little bit crude, but before that, we just looked at butts in seats. How many people do you have sitting in your campus, in your chairs as of census date? And based upon that, this is how much money you want to get. Doesn't matter if by the end of the semester, you started with 30 students at census and you wind up with 4 at the end of the semester, and I'm being dramatic, but there was nothing that mattered except on census date. You wanted to have the maximum number of students sitting because that's how you were funded. We had a chancellor who came in, Chancellor Eloy came in and said, you know, there's got to be a better way. We aren't doing the best things for students. We need to look at something else besides butts and seats and FTES. So he came up with the student-centered funding formula. And so 70% is looking at census data, but the other 20% is looking at target. The other is looking at how many students are successful in terms of certificates, transfer, retention, and all of those other things. So I'm going to turn it over to you, but I wanted you to get a sense of the history of where we came from to see where we're going now.
Okay, so thank you very much, Dr. J, for that context. I'm going to state some of that, but using slightly different terminology. So essentially, what the student-centered funding formula did was to shift away from SB 361, which did provide apportionment funding based on largely enrollment, size of institution and enrollment. Size of institution also determined by enrollment. And so that component is still incorporated in the current funding system. It represents 70% of the way in which resources are allocated. So for those of you policy wonks like me, it's basically an incremental adjustment to existing policy to add in a performance or pay for performance element to the existing policy approach for funding. The elements of performance were aligned with the vision for success in terms of addressing the needs of low-income students and also to provide an incentive for institutions to prioritize student success. Once again, a priority of the vision for success. And so we have now our funding formula that reflects all three components. The basic, which is based on size of the institution and enrollment as measured by FTES, but by different categories. And we'll talk a little bit about that. And then the supplemental, which is the amount of headcount that we are serving in terms of low-income students, and then 10% for student success. With that, the state did not want to adversely impact the district, so they built in the hold harmless. So the hold harmless ensured that districts would not receive revenues below their 17-18 amount adjusted for COLA in a cumulative manner to present. And so that's what was done. So the way in which total computational revenue is calculated is there are three calculations that they use. They take all of the various measures of the student-centered funding formula, the amount of FTS, the head count on all of these different measures and things like that. And they run through that calculation. I'll show you that in a moment. They run through that calculation and that produces an amount of revenue. And then they look at what they call the stability calculation. The stability calculation is they take a look at the previous year. So PY is previous year, for those of you who are tracking who like algebra like I do and like formulas. And so they take the previous year's total computational revenue and they basically adjust it for the last year's, for the current year's COLA, and see what that calculation produces in terms of revenue. And then the third is they take the 17-18 total computational revenue, make the adjustments for the various COLAs that have been approved to that point, and that gives you your third calculation. And whichever calculation produces the highest amount of revenue, that's the one that the district gets, okay? Now, that had been the way in which this provision had worked up until, I guess it was 2 years ago, in which they said, okay, we're not going to do that any longer. We're going to sunset the hold harmless provision effective after 24-25. And last year, they indicated that they're going to establish a new funding for. So what does that mean? That means that your TCR in after 24-25, that's going to be your new funding for. So instead of calculating 3 different ways your revenues, it's only going to be done 2 ways. You're going to look at what is your funding floor established by 24-25 and your student-centered funding formula revenue calculation. Whichever is highest, that's what you're going to get. Okay, next slide, please. And so here's a couple of things that we want to note. So for the base allocation, that we use 3 years average in terms of FTS, and that all FTS isn't the same because there are different rates that you get paid, as a word to speak, for the different kind of FTS. Credit, there's a certain rate for credit. There's a different rate for non-credit, special admits, which is dual enrollment, and career development and career preparation, or what we say SD, CDCP. So there are different rates. And so it's important because it influences, how much you actually get paid. Supplemental is different. It's the only measure that's not what we call smooth, meaning that we don't average that. It's just looking at the prior year headcount. And then the same thing goes, and then with regard to the success, they use 3-year averaging of the success data in order to determine that component of the allocation model. And so I know that we've had some conversation around, well, why do we use, productivity of 17.5 and so forth and so on. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time talking about it, but let me at least make this point. FTS is defined in such a way that what they're looking at doing, what the state was looking at doing, is to establish a standard that could be used across the different makeup of the district and across the different kinds of pedagogical approaches to delivering instruction. And so what it reflects is the full-time student in terms of the amount of contact hours in a semester. And they assume that that is 525. And it's based on, in this case, 15 units, which is how we define a full-time students, okay, taking 5 classes, okay? And so to say that, we don't need to pay attention to it isn't correct. There is flexibility, but on average, that's what is expected in order for you to be operating within set standards in terms of the revenues that are provided. Okay.
Dr. Jones, we have about 15 more slides. So could you
Pick it up? Yes. Okay.
pick it up just a bit?
Just, okay, yes, ma'am. I will do that. All right, so in event, so this here is us going through that calculation, all of those different measures calculated. You see here, we have the base allocation. We have an amount there is 106 million. And then the supplemental allocation, 16.6 million there. And then lastly, the success measure. And what you'll see there is, it says student-centered funding formula without hold harmless at $135 million. That's what we would earn. That's our revenue that we earn based on the data and the calculation under the student-centered funding formula. Then what we do is we take the 17-18 revenue, adjust it for COLA. Under that scenario, our revenue is $147 million. And so that's our max TCR, and that approach, that hold harmless approach, taking 17-18 adjusted and on a cumulative basis, has given us our max TCR since we adopted this. Next slide, please. So remember we were talking about taking data, making projections. This is one of those instances in which we are doing just that. So if we look at what has been codified in statute in terms of the changes to the funding policy that we are doing, we are very likely to see that there is an increase in our revenue. Our TCR is likely to increase in 24-25. Right now, there's information that suggests that might be around 3.5% for next year. This year, 8.22, but next year somewhere around 3.5%. So factoring in that, and given the provision of the hold harmless going away and establishing a new funding floor, we would project that our revenues would stay flat until such point that we earn more under the student-centered funding formula calculation. However, if we look at the rate of growth in terms of our expense budget, our expense budget continues to rise. And it had been rising at a rate that was relatively close to the increases in revenue. But when we are not expected to have ongoing revenue increases, we have an inflection point that is concerning, that we have to figure out, how do we deal with that? Next slide, please.
I'm just gonna take some of the, can we take this, oh, actually, well, let's go back to the previous slide if we can for a second. So what I'm seeing here, just to reiterate, maybe highlight here, is that, so this blue line, and we've seen this here and we've seen it across the state and we've seen it at many other community colleges too as well. So that blue line is what our revenues are going to be, because it's going to be without the hold harmless. And so then we have the gray line, which is our expenses going forward, and the delta between them is what is very concerning. So I guess my question is, for that gray line that's continuing to increase, all things being equal, meaning our enrollment continues to be kind of where it is. But I think for me, the other question is it increasing because even our current expenses over time are just going to increase because of the nature of inflation, or is it increasing for other reasons? So what is the, why is it increasing?
It's a combination of several things. So let me, great question, but let me continue and I'll answer that a little bit more in detail with the next slides. Next slide, please. Okay, so actually we've seen this, so let's go to the next slide. We know that our enrollments have been declining, right? We know that there's a gap between our funded enrollment and our earned enrollment. Okay, so next slide. So now this begins to address, no, back one more, please. I'm so sorry. Yeah, so here's the, oh, one more, forward. Yep, there, perfect, thank you. So here's what I'm trying to do an analysis, looking at revenue as a function of changes in FTS. So I plot that because I mentioned that there's a lot of different efficiency measures that are used around the state to gauge how things are going. And so what I did here was to look at our revenues per funded FTS. And you can see the trajectory of that. That's the blue line. But what you look at is, I also did the same thing with the expenses as a function of FTS as well. So here's what you want to know. There are specific cost drivers. Chief among them would be our PERS and STIRS increases that occur every year, our health and welfare benefits that increase every year, step and column. All of those are employer paid items that if we do nothing, just maintain staffing levels exactly where they are, every year our staff costs more. That's just the reality. Okay. However, when you look at the analysis and do it on a per FTS basis, it becomes more acute when your FTS goes down. That's why that gap increases, because we have two things happening. Our costs are going up and our FTS or enrollment has been going down. So when you look at that in combination, that gap becomes even greater. And I don't know that everyone sort of recognize that at first. Well, this is why we go through this, to show you and to try to create it in a way that's visually easier to understand. Next slide, please.
Implied in that also, or maybe not, is OPEB expenses too, right? And I think those are the benefits that you were referring to.
That's correct. Those are exactly, that's right. And it includes the liability in terms of OPEB, because this one isn't just limited to the personnel expenses. This is total expenses. So everything, and that's an important characteristic. It's our total expenses. It's everything that we pay for or we budget for the district. And that includes what we budgeted for bad debt, for OPEB, for personnel, for facilities, utilities, all of these things. Yeah.
Okay, can we pause there for just a second? Because as I look at the trend analysis and the widening gap between that flat blue line a couple slides back and then the expenditures, is that gray line, if you back up a couple slides there, does your gray line that's increasing, does that actually include the OPEB money?
Yes, it does.
Okay. The OPEB money is a pretty big chunk of money that we don't have figured out. What's the ballpark?
Say that again.
What's the ballpark deficit between our ability to pay off our OPEB debt, the bond debt, not the healthcare liability, but the bond debt? What's the ballpark? What's the dollar figure we're looking at here on that chart? And that matters because as we think about sort of the efficiencies of the district, et cetera, if we don't say, by the way, a really significant portion of this delta between revenue and expense is that OPEB debt, then our analysis is really different. If we don't say, look, $10 million a year or whatever it is, I can't remember exactly the.
Well, last year it was this year we it's $16.5 million, of which 9.8 million came out of Trust One.
Okay. And so we had a delta of about $7 million that had to come out of our general revenue.
Yes.
And that's getting bigger and bigger.
6.7 came out of the general fund.
Okay. And so when we look out to fiscal year 29 and 30, and we look at this huge delta from 171 to $222 million, how much of that is OPEB? And I'm asking that because it's understanding why we have this problem leads to a very different analysis about how we fix it. Some of these things are not fixable by anything we're doing in enrollment management. It's like that wasn't the problem. The problem was bad fiscal management on the OPEB side. This board and the administration just made some mistakes. And I'm not trying to blame anybody about it because this is the situation that we're in. But how we understand the problem really matters.
Okay, so let me.
You following me?
I do. I follow you.
Thank you.
However, I want to make a couple of clarifying points. Number one is that you're right. This reflects the total cost. And one of the things that we are going to do over the course of the year is what I'm proposing is to do a detailed cost analysis, which we haven't done, so that we have a really, really good understanding of what the drivers of our costs are and how do we contextualize and understand the nature of them and the degrees of freedom that we have in terms of doing something differently.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I think that that's really, really important to reflect that. The other thing is that what I did here was to take a look at the historic norms in terms of the percent change from the past and project that forward. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't have a crystal ball, and so I don't know what's going to happen. However, I am very much able to take a look at past norms and project those forward. All things else being equal, it's likely that that's going to be the result given what we know about the past.
And Dr. Jones, the only thing I'm trying to understand here is that your presentation up to this point has been very clear about kind of the problem. And the problem is this differentiation between our SCIF revenues and our SCIF performance. Okay, that's a big part of our problem. I get that. But then when we look at the full outgo of revenue or of expenditures, if we don't include SCIF, we're missing, I mean, not SCIF, sorry, OPEB. If we don't include OPEB, we're missing half of the picture. Not all of it, but half of it. And for new board members, you wouldn't necessarily look at that delta and go, oh yeah, that also includes $10 million of medical bond cost repayment. Thank you.
Sure, absolutely.
But-
Dr. Reese.
Yes, but I think maybe the delta wouldn't be as large. However, there still is, even if we extracted the OPEB because of the hold harmless no longer being there and because of our expenditures rising, all things being equal with the cost of inflation and benefits and all of that. So it's still going to be a delta. Maybe it's not going to be as large, but it's still a problem.
Well, the other thing too, that I also want you guys to be aware of this. And that is, we had, irrespective of the OPEB bond, we had a liability. The district agreed to pay for retiree benefits, okay? That, the vehicle that we are using to pay for that is through these bonds. But bear in mind, we had that fiscal obligation irrespective of the way in which we chose to do it, because we could have paid for everything out of the general fund. But then we wouldn't have much general fund to do our core mission either. And I want to be clear about that. So we're talking about the totality of the district's fiscal liability and responsibility that we're looking at. And so exploring that and understanding it better at a more granular, detailed level absolutely makes sense.
You
Next
know,
slide.
if I,
I don't think you're on, Bill.
Mike, please.
this board, as it was constituted over the years and whatever, was never made appraised of the OPEB bond issue. And the fact that the district rolled the bonds out when they came due, instead of paying them off as it originally was programmed to do, rolled them out so that they wouldn't have to incur expenses on the current data. And there's a lot of money out there that is owed, that this district, and hopefully you'll appraise this board over time, the way we're currently programmed and on track, we're not going to pay it off. There's no way to pay it off.
Well,
Trustee Reese.
I'd have to look at that, Trustee Whitfield. I don't know. I do know that it's something that we have to continue to look at and to
Well,
explore.
just to put it in a quick summary here.
Mhm.
We initially sold $153 million worth of bonds. Okay. 150 was put into a trust.
Yeah.
All right.
Trustee Reese, did you want to?
We now owe 200 and some odd, and we're 15 years down the pike. Instead of being half of that 150, we're up 50%. We need to make sure that this district focuses and incorporates the board, which incorporates the whole constituency, including the chancellor, understanding what we're doing. We're in a deep, deep hole. And the 11 million we're talking about, that is being paid out of Trust One for the healthcare.
You're absolutely right. I think,
It's
yeah.
being paid for
Yeah.
by the healthcare.
So what's really, thank you for that, Trustee Withrow. And I think that what's really good is that as a result of ACCJC, as a result of what we needed to do, we actually have a plan. So we're not kicking the can, we're not, going, we actually have a plan. So that's excellent.
Yeah.
So may I, Vice Chancellor Jones, can I just, since we don't have much time, can we just call maybe the last several important points for this PowerPoint presentation, because you have another one that is more precise or maybe more granular that we want to go over? No?
What we
Okay.
did was we provided resource information
okay.
in a second separate document. But I'm looking at the board and
Yeah.
I'm trying to read the room.
Yeah.
And I know that when we start getting into some of the historical details, you guys don't know, but in 2004, just to kind of give you a backdrop to what the discussion is. In 2004, previous to that, the district had lifetime benefits for every employee. Many districts also had that, but most of them made the decision in 1980s. This district did not make that decision in 2004. And so because of that, we have two tiers. We have a 2004 for those individuals that retired after that date that were employed at that time, still have lifetime benefits. But anyone that was hired after that do not have lifetime benefits, but they have a very lucrative benefits plan. We have a very lucrative plan. We've been working on trying to manage that, and that was why Trust Fund 1 was developed, so that we would have something that was put aside, that was not part of the general fund, but was part of the general fund, but was earmarked to pay off the bond debt. And that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about the general fund per se, or operating costs. We're talking about a trust fund that is still under the, I guess, the auspices of general fund, but they're put aside and they are allowable. We have gone through all of this with our bond counsel, with our bond advisors, to figure out how we can move forward and to pay off that debt. That's the plan that I think Trustee Abella-Reese is responding to, but it's also a concern. And I don't want to be morbid, but no one is guaranteed life forever. So some of those individuals that were under that lifetime benefits are also getting older. And so in some ways, it's also declining because of that. So there's a lot of things, really not a discussion for this. I was saying we didn't want to go down a rabbit hole and we went down one anyway. But if we can wrap it up about this, but it is an issue. We do have a plan, and it's a modest plan because those costs are still going up. But one of the things we've done since I've been here is we put $1 million per year extra to help to reduce that debt, that principal. Because if you reduce the principal, the interest payments, even though they're going to be on a smaller portion. We've been doing that and addressing that. So hopefully that gives you a little bit more background, because I saw eyes glazing over like, what
Thank you,
in the
Jennifer.
heck are you guys talking about?
I do want to be mindful of time. as well,
Yes.
'cause it's getting late.
Next slide, please. So I'm just going to go through a few of these really quickly. And so this is just giving you another view on our overall expenses. 84% of our expenses, even though trustees, that the OPEB and all that, that's part of the 16%. 84% of our expense budget is in personnel. Next slide. And these just gives you the details of that. So essentially, when you look at that, we have approximately 53% of the expense for the personnel expenses associated with our faculty. 32.3% is classified professionals, and 14.9% is associated with administrators. Next slide, please. And then this just gives you a sense of how does Peralta compare to other districts in the state. So essentially, when you look at FTS to FTF, you know, the full-time faculty at the other institutions produce 7% more in terms of FTS than our faculty do. The cost, and this is where the issue of the productivity matters greatly. On average, for using the 2021 data, it costs the other districts about 10,000 per FTS. It costs us $11,578 or 15.6% higher than the state average. Which is why I say we really do need to do a detailed cost analysis to figure out why, what are some of these things? And they may very well, Nikki, as you are indicating, maybe highly correlated with the decision made in terms of how we chose to finance our liability for our retirees. And as Chancellor Jackson indicated, many organizations shifted away from guaranteed benefit plans much sooner than perhaps Peralta did. And so these are, if nothing else, it helps us to understand why we are where we are and what we can do better moving forward. So next slide.
Trustee Reese has a question.
Sorry, Vice Chancellor Jones. So can you, in this slide here, can you actually show us where 17.5 plays a role? So
Cost per FTES.
So cost per FTS, so the FTS, FTEF, and then so 17 point, because across the state, right, it's usually 17.5 for most colleges. That's what they want as a productivity
That's
goal.
what the standard is, and
Right.
some fall below that to varying degrees. Some are higher. That depends on their mix of programs and pedagogical
Right.
approaches
Right.
and all of those
Right.
sorts of things. Yes.
So I guess the question that I'm asking is, the reason why Peralta costs more is because of our lower, because of what?
The answer is, I don't know why we cost more. That's why we want to do an analysis to determine that. But what I can tell you is this, part of the reason is that with whether the input is faculty or the input is something else, we're producing less FTES as a result of that. That's what the FTS per FTF show. Okay, that's what, and once again, I want to be really clear about this. This isn't Dr. Jones's data. This is data that I'm getting from the state chancellor's office that we have reported over time to them. And so this came from their work with me in providing this information. Okay, next slide, please. Yeah.
I realize you're trying to get through a lot of material, and I actually really appreciate the depth in which you're going. And I would suggest that probably everybody here knows this isn't even the depth that we need to go in. So for example, if we talk about FTES versus FTE, well, but the SCIF changed that. So like, do we care about that? Maybe we really need to be looking at, the various other metrics that are part of the SCIF, if in fact we're going to do that. So yes, and I guess here's, I was going to say this later, but I'll say it now. This is where it's so critical that we have a bunch of people on the ground, particularly at the college level, who are built into this process. I look at the slides and I'm like, what's going on at the granular college level to help us bring the wisdom of what goes on there to this analysis? And in particular, if we don't have buy-in across the board on the analysis, then you have people like Jeff who goes cynically, I don't buy this. This looks manipulative. And I don't want anybody in our district to be coming away from the process feeling as though some critical perspective is missing or being manipulated. We're not going to solve the problem that way. And so I'm still waiting for the Academic Senate in using its 10+1 authority to come forward with a recommendation on planning processes and budget processes. That's their purview. If they will come forward with something that we could all go, yeah, that constitutes shared governance. We believe in that. Dr. Jones, I've heard you call for that. I'm eager for this deep discussion. And because I'm trying not to be cynical at all. I'm right, being really attentive. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Next slide, please. We're just going to keep going. Next slide, please. You can go back. Next slide. Next slide. These are just reflect why the costs are where they are in terms of some of the employee costs. So next slide.
Trustee Johannes?
All right.
Okay.
Yeah, and so here, as we make the transition to the new resource allocation model, as the chancellor indicated, this is work that the district has been engaged in for quite some time. We've made presentation, and so it was important that we, because of the enormity of the change and all the other things that we were doing, decided to move forward with implementation in a phased approach. And so one of the things that we're doing this year is making sure that the entities, namely the colleges, are accountable for their carry forward balance, positive or negative. We sought to provide enhanced training for the college business units so that they, as you were talking about, Nikki, understand these things at a much more granular operating level. That was accomplished. And then to obtain input on expense budgeting approaches. There were several forums that were held where data and information was provided that we hope to then use as we think through and to develop the process moving forward. And these are some of the things that we hope to do over the course of this year. As I mentioned, revise the expense budgeting process to reflect some of these input that we've heard, conduct the district-wide cost analysis, review and to explore revenue diversification strategies, as well as expense reduction strategies, refine and to reallocate district versus shared governance to clarify more appropriately shared services from the district operation. So these are things that we are hoping to do. Next slide, please. And so next slide, we've showed you that. And so we're going to clarify that. And so this is sort of one way of looking at it, is proposing something like this, where we're getting in a more robust way input from the college at the early part of the process. Once the finance, there's a two-way arrow where finance provide information on revenues and constraints that will inform college initial work in terms of budget development. And then they provide that, and then it is then brought together and then shared with the Planning and Budget Committee. And then, as you were talking about, Nikki, that we incorporate the Academic Senate in there, which it wasn't part of our original process, but now adding that, as well as then to the Participatory Governance Council as well. And then it proceeds to the chancellor, and then to this is just a proposal. We haven't done it, but it's one way of doing some of the things that we've heard reflected in conversations with regard to our faculty colleagues, with regard to our Board of Trustees members, and with regard to other stakeholder groups. This is one way, but we need to, have more intimate conversations about this and so forth. So I think I'm going to stop there. And if there are other questions, Dr. Jackson and I will be happy to answer those for you.
Thank you for that. Mine is just more for best practice, a little bit more of a admin note. Just regarding the charts and graphs moving forward, I'd like to ask if we can have all the y-axes start at 0, as at times if it doesn't start at 0, it can be misleading. It can be deemed as misleading, I should say. People will view this session, and I'm saying this as a professor of data visualization. This is just something that's a general practice, or else others, the audience, and your audiences of different levels, they may not understand exactly how to view it. For example, the 32 to 30% has such a huge gap, it's 2%. And so if it was started at 0, it would look more natural, more to scale as to what it is.
Okay.
I just-
Excellent. No worries. Thank you for the feedback.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation, Dr. Jones. A couple of things. I mean, this is what I heard from Mark was retention is down, enrollment is up, but retention is down. And, I guess and maybe this is a question for the chancellor or for Mark, in terms of if we have to increase, when there's a gap between revenues and expenses, either you got to cut your expenses or increase your revenues or both. And so I'm wondering, what we can do in terms of retention, because I hear the marketing is really focused from what I heard on the enrollment side. But in terms of revenue, how we keep retention, so we actually have an additive value in terms of the number of students attending the colleges when we're growing enrollment. And then I'm wondering about the participatory governance committee. I'm wondering if there's a way, as you think about we think about a proposed way in which to go through the shared governance structure. I'd be interested in hearing, so we, at the end of the day, we get an approved budget through the different systems or we don't. But I also am curious about what were the dissenting views? Did administration end up on one side and faculty and staff on the other? Was it a mixture? And why did people feel the way that they feel? So that when we get the budget, we're actually able to not only understand the end product, but some of the concerns that came up along the way.
Thank you for that.
Yes, so I have questions about some of our classes and how that impacts us. We have programs across our college district, like I think the rad tech program at Merritt, the nursing program, and other dental hygienist program, where by industry standards or whatever that, industry guidelines that they're limited to specific class sizes. And that is something we do not control. I mean, we could fill every one of those classes and they would still be way below productivity rates, because that's what the, whatever is governing that. Now, and all of those programs are completely necessary for the health of our community, for the people that live in the community. We need all those programs. In fact, we really need to expand those programs based on what we're looking for healthcare in the future. And I'm wondering if there's any kind of discussion across the state about how to fund those programs to where the colleges that actually teaching those programs, those critical programs, aren't being penalized because they're following the certified standards of, they're filled to the max because somebody outside of the community college system is setting a limit, and probably rightfully so, for all kinds of reasons. And, because those certainly impact our productivity rates. And I'm wondering if there's discussion about funding those in a different way.
Well, I'd answer the question this way. I've not heard any conversations around that regard. And here's why. The standard of 17.5, that productivity, is on average. And so it's put in place with the understanding that there are going to be some of those high cost programs, but most of the colleges are comprehensive. And by the same token, there are going to be a percentage of your programs that you're able to even exceed the 17.5. And then there are going to be others that are going to be below that. But on average, that's where you should be landing.
The short answer is no. There is no discussion at the state level. They are leaving that up to each district to come up with that. And different districts have taken different tacks. That Chabot Las Visitas, we put that in and factored that in. We established and agreed with the faculty on what that would be for those CTE programs. But we also used the factor of 17.5, and then we made a change and adjusted that to 16.5, recognizing that we would not have as robust a schedule because we could not afford it. So if you reduce that denominator, you have to increase on the other side to make sure that it balances out, given what the cost is. That agreement was reached within that district. We have not been able to come up with anything like that within Peralta. And it has been, it started out with the Enrollment Management Committee. They established a plan, they disbanded themselves. And then it became the Office of Educational Services to establish that. And so it just kind of rolled along, and we really didn't look at these numbers until 2021. And then it was an outcry because we had not addressed it for a number of years, but we can't. You see the trajectory yourself. We don't want to go back to the extreme of laying people off because we didn't make tough decisions. So we're going to talk a little bit about that at the retreat tomorrow. And if we don't finish, we can bring it up again at a later date. But we need to make some choices or get some guidance from the board on where we need to utilize our resources. And our resources are our people, our time, and our facilities and all the other resources, technology, to make some decisions on moving forward. And it doesn't have to be, we want you to do X, Y, Z, but to give us some guidance of where you want us to focus on. And if that focus is consolidation, so be it. If it isn't, if it's on, looking at programs that are not viable, we have a policy on that. But I can't remember the last time a college has, except for Long Beach, they made that tough decision. And 3 board members lost their seat because of it, but they did the right thing.
So I have one other question. One of our SCIF metrics is transfers to four-year college. And currently, I just read an article where something like 70% of our students that are trying to transfer to UCs are not getting all of their credits recognized because the UCs don't think that they're rigorous enough, or different, they're not taught the right things. And then there's differences between state colleges require 2 semesters of biochem or organic chemistry, and the UCs, I mean, there's no, so all the community colleges across the state are being penalized because the UCs and the state universities cannot align their transfer protocols. And is any allowance, or is there discussion of allowance for the fact that we're doing our job? It's just that the places are, the metric should be getting credit for is not happening because the people above us are not doing their job.
Yes and no. The guaranteed transfer program that we currently have in place was only with the state colleges. It is not with the UCs. The UCs have traditionally and continue to not honor that. We no longer have articulation agreements. So we're in a bind and they have the upper hand. So it's being discussed, but there's very little traction being made. The UCs just got a new chancellor. Maybe that will change things.
There's also legislation.
It is, and they have the leverage to be able to not get that legislation changed.
We don't have articulation agreements with the UC system anymore.
That went away. Vice presidents, help me out. I don't even remember when it went away, but it's been a while.
This, we need to watch what we talk about then, because when we convey to the students coming to the community colleges the idea of going to a four-year college, that they're going to get credit for the courses they take here.
At the state
And I have
colleges.
a student we just gave a scholarship to at
President,
80 credits.
If you have something to say, please.
Yeah, we're getting a little bit, thank you.
Because
into
we're
the-
getting into the weeds, but
Let's hear from the presidents and then we can wrap up this.
yeah,
discussion.
but our agreements right now by legislation are with the state colleges, like Cal State East Bay, like San Francisco State, but not with Cal Berkeley, not with Stanford, any of the privates. That's all on a one-on-one. And it depends on the counselor that you get on the other side. If they say they allow it or not, that still goes on. President Johnson, Dr. Beskoff, did you guys have something you want to add so we can end this?
In terms of the transfer degrees, the chancellor is absolutely correct. Those are with the CSUs. That's where the agreements are. And certainly that's been a long ongoing conversation, especially as it relates to higher unit degrees such as chemistry. I mean, that's one of the big pain points that's been in the system. In terms of IGETC patterns, though, we have those agreements. We have those classes that do transfer. And then to a certain degree, not with every UC, but there are tag agreements as well, which allow for transfer.
Thank you.
Thank
But
you,
we
Dr.
we
Beskoff.
don't have articulation agreements like we used to have. So we'd have to articulate what every UC that we wanted our students, and that was
Right.
just too cumbersome, which started the discussion that got us with the UCs, CSUs. Any other questions to Dr. Jones or,
And then we'll wrap it up.
okay?
I just have one thing real quick. Look, it seems to me this is a math problem and a values problem. From the SCIF formula, we need to just treat it like a math problem. There's a formula. We need to figure out how to maximize our revenue in that formula. Good. Separately, there's a values question. And I don't think we can let the SCIF tell us what's actually important. We can figure that out locally through whatever processes. Everybody knows the SCIF is a particular formula. A lot of us don't think it has anything to do with being student-centered. A lot of us opposed it to begin with, opposed pay for performance, but we got to live with it. Now, separately, if we just say internally, what do we value as educators and how do we pay the bills? Those are two separate questions. And that's why, Dr. Jones, that third column on your resource allocation model, like transformation, if we can internally say, well, how are we going to spend our money? How are we going to generate our revenue based on whatever values we can generate, and then the math? That's the question. Let's not get caught up on who's to blame, because we can't balance the budget on the back of FTES generation, and we can't blame the faculty for not doing that. That's just like the math doesn't work and it's not even correct. So thank you. This was really detailed. I'm super appreciative of the conversation.
Thank you. And with that, we can wrap up this discussion. Thank you, colleagues. And now we can go to our consent calendar. VP Quillen.
I kind of messed up on this one, but I'm wondering if the chancellor, if we have ability to describe these grants and apprenticeships that the colleges in the district have been working hard to get for our students and for our community.
This is on the consent calendar?
Yeah, they're on the, but we don't have to vote on each one, just so that we can have a description of the success and the work that our colleges are doing. in the
Yes.
public
We can
forum.
do that under the discussion. So if I can entertain a motion,
Move approval of the consent calendar.
minus 9.1, 9.2.
Yeah, which are, that's part of action now. Yes.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion.
So I would defer to the presidents. And in fact, just to put it on the public record, in the future, when we have items of interest like grants, it has been requested by the board that the presidents address that in their comments. So 9.1, I believe, is
6.1.
I'm
6.1.
sorry. A little tired eyes here. Berkeley City College. And then 8.2. No, that's wrong. Was there another one that you wanted?
6.2, 6.3, 6.4, and 6.5.
Okay. Just a high level update of what they are. If we could start with 8.1 and then go back up. I'm
6.1.
sorry.
It's okay.
Which colleges?
That would be BCC. So Dr. Richardson.
And Dr. Richardson, I know you're new, so I won't ask you to do a lot of detail on that. So why don't we start with the other one?
What we can do, what we're talking about up here is that maybe we can come back to this next meeting.
We could, and have the presidents give an update of that. Please, in the future, include any item that's on the agenda that it has to do with grants in your presentation.
So do we need to approve these tonight so budgets can be loaded and everything?
Yes, they've gone through the process. We just don't have all of the data here and probably don't have the right people here because usually these are programmatic at the lower levels with the deans and the vice presidents.
I just think
Thank
it's
you.
important to.
I agree with you.
publicize it.
And thank you for highlighting it. I gave out that guidance before, but maybe it was forgotten. But we won't in the
And we will,
future,
we
right?
talked about
President?
this with the board officers have discussed this with the chances that we'll do this moving forward.
Yes, we will do this going forward. Thank you.
Okay, let's go ahead and do what?
Student trustee Masson,
Yes.
trustee Withrow,
Yes.
trustee Johannes,
Yes.
trustee Gonzalez Yuan,
Yes.
trustee Napoli Bellarice,
Yes.
trustee Gonzalez Brito,
Yes.
trustee Quinlan,
Yes.
trustee Delphine Polk.
Yes,
You have a quorum.
thank you. Let's go ahead and go to 9.1. That was moved to the action items. Consider review of purchase order report for the period covering June 1, 2023 through June 30th, 2023.
Move approval.
Thank you. Second.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion. Thank you, Quinn. You pulled it.
I just plan on go ahead and I can't vote on that.
Thank you. Let's go ahead and move to roll call.
Student trustee Masson,
Yes.
trustee Withrow,
Yes.
trustee Johannes.
Yes.
Thank you. Trustee Gonzalez Yuan,
Yes.
trustee Napoli Bellarice,
Yes.
trustee Gonzalez Brito,
Yes.
trustee Quinlan,
Abstain.
trustee Delphine Polk.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. We'll move straight to 9.2. Consider review the warrant and payment report for the same period.
Move approval.
Thank you. Second.
Second.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Same.
It's the same issue. Okay, no worries. Let's go ahead and move to roll call.
Student trustee Masson,
Yes.
trustee Withrow,
Yes.
trustee Johannes,
Yes.
trustee Gonzalez Yuan,
Yes.
trustee Napoli Bellarice,
Yes.
trustee Gonzalez Brito,
Yes.
trustee Quinlan,
Same.
trustee Delphine Polk.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, thank you. Let's go ahead and go to the regular action items. I'm sorry, the continuing the action items, 10.1. Consider adoption of resolution 2324-101, ratifying an agreement incorporating piggyback contract for purchase of consulting services and technology support services from Huron Consulting Services, LLC.
Madam President, I'd like
Yes.
to move item 10.1 and 10.2.
Great,
Second.
thank you.
10.2 is delegation of authority to the chancellor during the recess.
Thank you. And we have a second from trustee Withrow.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Let's go ahead and move to roll call.
Student trustee Masson,
Yes.
trustee Withrow,
Yes.
trustee Johannes,
Yes.
trustee Gonzalez Yuan,
Yes.
trustee Napoli Bellarice,
Yes.
trustee Gonzalez Brito,
Yes.
trustee Quinlan,
Yes.
trustee Delphine Polk.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's go ahead and move to Board of Trustees reports. Please raise your hand if you have something you'd like to share out. Trustee Johannes?
Yes, thank you. I just want to mention, I guess, everyone realized I wasn't here at the last session. I was attending a conference. A few other individuals attended with me as well. It's the CAPC conference, California Association of Black School Educators. And because I was not here, I want to speak on this to ensure that, I'm still working for the district while not in the session. And it was very enlightening. This year, they focused on the education, or how they call it, diseducation of young Black girls. And this organization is from K to 14, so it does, relate to what we're doing here. But what was interesting about it, it was about education of young Black girls, especially in STEM. And number one, a lot of people focus on certain minorities, but when you're multiple, it's a little bit more difficult. So most people don't focus on women, or they want to focus only on Black and brown. So this one was specifically for this, and I've not seen that before. And number two, regarding getting young girls interested in STEM. As somebody who teaches in STEM, on multiple in undergrad and graduate, unfortunately, I don't think I've taught anybody who looks like me. So I think that it's very, this specific event was very interesting to see how you can get young girls into STEM and then moving forward once they pass 12 to continue with their success. So I'd like to continue going to these events, and it was wonderful to meet people, learn about this, and continue to learn about it.
Thank you, Trustee Johannes. VP Quinlan?
So I know August is recruitment month for our students. And I just want to remind all of our presidents, if you need a warm body at any of these events, please feel free to call. But I'm open for service to recruiting new students.
Anybody on this side? I'll do a quick report out. So I was also reporting in virtually last meeting from the National Association of Latino Elected Officials, which was a fantastic conference of Latino elected officials from all over the country. And so we were able to take a lot of workshops. There were a few workshops that were geared towards school board and community college trustees. And some of the feedback that I gave them was to have more material actually specific to community colleges, because a lot of the tracks were kind of geared towards K-12, but a lot of us look at the same issues, especially with regards to educating Latino students and providing services that are culturally competent, et cetera. And so it was really, really awesome to learn more from my counterparts in other parts of the country and kind of get out of the Bay Area bubble just a little bit. I was in New York City. It was incredibly hot. And so I was excited to come back and to share out what I learned over there and to network with other elected officials who are of Latino descent. Go ahead, Trustee Gonzalez-Ren.
Thank you. I too called in at the last meeting. I was at the conference in Chicago, Netroots Nation. And the two key takeaways for me from this conference were the power of relational organizing, leveraging the relationships and the networks that we have. That's so powerful. And we in our classroom spaces have that opportunity every day as we interact with students and we teach students in that way. The second kind of key track that I was following was the track on kind of brain science and mindfulness. And I'm just reminded how difficult it is to learn when you feel threatened, how your brain just isn't functioning optimally. And I'm reminded of the many ways at Peralta in which people are combining relationships with threat reduction, so that peer-to-peer and student-to-student people are more ready to learn. I think if we could do that with each other more, kind of be more conscious of figuring out how to help people feel safe, to put out ideas, to take risks, to try things without feeling like they're going to get jumped on at every moment, then we'll do better. We'll learn better. As an educational institution, we should always be figuring that out. And so I just really appreciated both those things about this conference. And I hope I can embody those insights better as I try to carry out my service to the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Gonzalez-Ren. Anyone else? Okay, let's move to, we have a closed session readout that we do need to read out. So VP Quinlan, go ahead. And then
Yes,
we'll go to announcements.
my apologies. I made a mistake earlier when I said we didn't have any items. We have one item. On a motion by VP Quinlan and seconded by Trustee Gonzalez-Ewan, the board voted unanimously to release an administrative employee number 8320 from continued employment with the district.
Thank you. And now we'll move to regular announcements.
Regular announcements for July 25th, 2023. Enrollment is now open for fall 2023 semester, and fall is free at the Peralta Colleges. Please visit www.peralta.edu to start the enrollment process. Enrollment events are happening at each of the colleges, including Berkeley City College is hosting an event tomorrow, July 26th from 2 to 4 p.m. College of Alameda is hosting COA Coachella on Wednesday, July 26th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Laney College reentry back to school event is coming up on Saturday, July 29th from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Laney College is also hosting one-stop Saturday enrollment support events on August 12th and 19th. Merritt College financial aid workshops every Tuesday and Wednesday from noon to 1 p.m. Please visit the college websites for time and location details. Item number 3, thank you taxpayers. Please join us at Merritt College on September 6th, 2023 at 10 a.m. for the groundbreaking ceremony for the new bond-funded horticultural complex. Refreshments will be served. More information will be shared soon on the Build Peralta website.
Thank you very much. And I think with that, we are adjourned. And just a quick reminder that the Board of Trustees retreat is tomorrow. And then after that, we will be on recess for the month of August.
So it's in person, right?
Yes. All right, we'll see some of you tomorrow.